Alright, and so we start off with the Windows Developer Preview screen, and we can see that the installation is similar to a Windows 7 installation. We choose the language, the time and currency format, the keyboard or input method, and we click Next. And then we click the Install Now option. We see the license agreement, we accept. We can choose to upgrade or do a custom installation. We'll choose custom for a clean install. We have our unallocated space here, 30 gigabytes. It's recommended on a 64-bit system that we use 20 gigabytes, so we gave it a little bit of extra on our Hyper-V system. We click Next, and it begins the process. Now, one thing to note, if you are installing this on Hyper-V, you may get an error message when you start things up, depending on the amount of memory that you allocate. For some reason, it doesn't quite like if you give it a memory allocation that it's not comfortable with. So 2 gigabytes is the minimum. If you decide, hey, I'm going to give it 4 gigabytes, and let's say you don't put in exactly the right number of megabytes to equal that in your Hyper-V setup when you create the VM, well, it spazzes out a little bit, and so it'll return an error message. So just make sure that you put in something that makes sense. In this case, we're sticking with the minimum, and we went with 2 gigabytes. So for the Hyper-V settings, we went with 2048 megabytes. We're going to pause the recording and let it pretty much just follow through with the installation. Alright, easy enough. We give the system a name. We click Next. We can look at some of the different settings. We can customize the settings or just use Express settings. For the sake of speed, we'll click Express settings. And then it says enter your favorite email address so we can go online and set up your Windows Live ID. Logging on this way makes Windows Developer Preview look and feel like your own. Windows Live will sync some settings like your browser favorites and history across the PCs you use. So this is an option. We can sign up for a Windows Live email address, we can put our email address, or we can say don't want to log on with a Windows Live ID. There are two different options for logging onto a PC that's running the Windows Developer Preview. We can use the Windows Live ID that we just decided not to use, or we can create a local account. Obviously, once the real Windows 8 comes out, we'll probably want to go with that Windows Live ID in order to sync all of our settings, like our browser favorites and history, shortcuts, languages, and passwords for the services we care about. However, for now, we'll stick with a local account. So we'll click Local Account, and here we'll provide a username, password, retype password, and we'll click Next. It's like they went out of their way to choose the most offensive colors of green that they could possibly find. Alright, and it looks like we have our installation complete. Note, we have this Metro UI here that we can work with. You can see that we can select any of these options, which we won't do at this time. The purpose of this video was just to show you the installation. If we click Desktop, it takes us to our familiar Windows 7 desktop. It's a little different though. Now, if you click the Start button again, it brings us back to the Metro UI, and we can play around here. But if we just hover our mouse over the Start button right in the lower left-hand corner, here you can see a very simple start setup. It's not like what we're used to with Windows 7. Gives us the time, gives us some information, and then we can make some choices. like settings, which will take us to some settings here for our desktop. Obviously, there's a lot more that Microsoft wants to do with Windows 8. They're just beginning the development process, and they're giving this as a developer preview so that developers can begin working on creating applications for it. But this gives us a little bit of an idea as to what it looks like to install and what the new look is going to be for Windows 8. So we hope you found this informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.